What are we whispering about?
I've had the same thing happen before where a big book slams down in front of me. It's an old book, like a brown leather-bound one, and it's quite big. And it flicks open itself and goes to a page. And this time it said Welsh Fae on there. It had some pictures and a load of writing, and then it disappeared.
In the air, by the sea, from the land, and within you and me. Fairies are whispering. Have you been coloured, confused, completely captivated, and craving clarity? This is Claire, and I am the Fairy Whisperer. To catch a whisper, you have to listen closely. Listen with me. Hello and welcome, everyone. How are you all doing? In this liminal time in the approach to Samhain, my thoughts always turn to my ancestors. And before I introduce my guest for this episode, Lauren, I have some news for you. It's a mixture of sad news and hopeful news. Very sadly, my mother lost her fight with cancer on the 19th of September, and she died very peacefully. As you will hear from the emotion in my voice, it's a difficult time for me at the moment. This podcast brings me a wonderful sense of focus, even in the most challenging times. And the roots of the Fairy Whispering podcast began in 2020 during the lockdown for the pandemic, when I decided to create some videos on my Fairy Whispering YouTube channel of interviews with friends about magic and enchantment. And a few of those interviews were about fairies. After lockdown in 2021, I began some audio training with a local community radio, and then from there I decided that I wanted to focus on my main passion, which is fairies, because I was speaking to more and more people about their fairy experiences, and I wanted to find answers to my own experiences too. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity of appearing in a movie called Fae Folk, A Search for Connection. I met with the wonderful film crew on Dartmoor and took them to some of my favourite pixie places where I spoke about pixie folklore. I've already spoken to Michaela and Tyson about the movie. If you want updates about the film in your inbox, then go to the Fae Folk Film Indiegogo page. I'll put the link to this in the description for this episode. Whilst I navigate this challenging time, I will continue to release episodes, but they just may be on a less frequent basis. I've got several people that I interviewed over the summer, some wonderful interviews to release, and they'll be coming as soon as possible. A few months ago, Lauren emailed me about a series of dreams about fairies living in the Forest of Dean. Lauren is clairvoyant and comes from a psychic family lineage. She's used to having visionary dreams, which she has recorded in a journal, and said that she only reached out to me because the fairies were reaching out to her for help. She said that they are unhappy about plans to dig up part of their forest for a new housing estate. Lauren felt that they wanted their story shared on my podcast to raise awareness about the endangered area of forest that they have lived in for thousands of years. Laura's dream was about an area of forest called Elfwood in the Forest of Dean. After her dream, Laura searched online and discovered that a new housing development had been planned for Elfwood and the neighbouring village of Milkwall. Remarkably, Laura has never been to the Forest of Dean, yet in her subsequent research she discovered that elements of the place and its history correlated to details of her dream. We also discussed some common threads between her experience, mine, and those of some of my other guests. I would not usually share the names of places, but I feel it's essential to raise awareness of the threat of development to our wild places, of which, sadly, Elfwood is only a tiny part. If you have had a fairy experience in the Forest of Dean, have any family stories, or know anyone who has seen fairies in the area, please get in touch on the email or social media links that are in my show description. Thank you. This is a beautiful and intriguing story that originated from my guest listening to the whispers of the fairies. To honour them, I've chosen to call this episode Elfwood. Enjoy. Hi Laura, how are you this evening?
Hi, good, thank you.
Thank you for coming on the Fairy Whispering podcast. I invited you on because you emailed me about an interesting experience that you've had in connection with fairies,
Yes.
so that the listeners can understand more about you and the fairy experience you've had. Could you, just in your own words, describe what you emailed me about? And take your time, there's no rush with this, just go at your own pace. Where did this all start?
Well, I've had dreams where the Fae come in for since 2023. I can pinpoint it to then, and it's sort of progressed. They talk more now, and then I had this dream a few nights back, and it was quite a big one with kind of a message attached to it that I believe anyway. And it started. I've had the same thing happen before where a big book slams down in front of me. It's an old book, like a brown leather bound one, and quite big. And it flicks open itself and goes to a page. And this time it said Welsh Fae on there. It had some pictures and a load of writing, and then it disappeared. And then a woman turned up. I don't believe that she was Fae. She's like an in-between person. I've had them turn up before. They are neither human nor Fae. They're just like a go-between. And she turned up and said that we needed to find Elfwood in Wales. And she took me to a map, and I was looking it up. I could see it, and then I looked up the coordinates, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't find it, and I said I can't find it. And so we kept looking and kept looking. And I said, it's not here. And she said, oh, well, I need to go and get some help. And we were in the woods. And she went over a bit away from me and she was doing something with her hands. I couldn't really see what it was. And then this being appeared. He was in a pile of leaves. He was dark brown, and the best way I can describe him is that he looked like Yoda. He had really black eyes, had sticky out ears, the same back, same height. He wasn't wearing anything, but I could only see up to his waist because it was all leaves underneath. They were like autumnal leaves, all brown and orange and crisp. And he spoke, and he was speaking very good English, very clear, very loud. He sounded like just like a wise old man. And he introduced himself and said his name was Hector. And he said that there's not many leaves left now with the memory. And he just kept saying things like that, and he was pointing down to the ground, sort of exasperated, saying there's just not much left now. And he said, he was trying to direct me to Elfwood, and he said it's an enchanted place, it's a magical place. And he said it's difficult to find, which I don't really know why. And I said to him I couldn't find it on the map. And he showed me an image of the border of Wales and England. And he said it's over in the wilderness now, it's in the wrong place. And he directed for me and this other being to go find it. And then he was gone. And so we kept looking for it and we just couldn't find it still. We were still searching for it. And in the end, some people turn up, some men, and I know, because I've had spirit beings turn up before, I know they weren't fae, they were definitely spirit men, and said, we'll help. And then I woke up. I think I was very startled by them, and it woke me up. And these men were definitely from an older time. They looked like workmen, very dirty and grubby from work. Anything from like the 1900s onwards. And I think they just startled me, so I just woke up instantly. And that's kind of it, really. I believe when I woke up, I looked up Elfwood and I saw that it was in the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire. So it was very near the border of Wales. And I did see that there's a lot of mine shafts there. So I'm not sure if these men were miners or not. They could have been. They were all wearing hats, but they looked like caps. And I did think, because it's in the Forest of Dean, it's a protected area. So I just thought, well, there can't be anything going on there. And then I just looked a bit further and see they are planning, they've given permission to build a new housing estate there. And I think this is what has disturbed this area. These fae beings do not want this estate to be built, and the trees there are very special to them. They said they have a memory, and there's not many of them left now. But they don't want them to be destroyed. It's important to them. And I think that was their message. I don't know why it came through to me, but I thought I'd have to relay it and just see what people thought. And I know there's a lot of replanting going on, which is great with trees, but for this Hector, he seemed to think that, or he knew that some of these trees have a certain memory and there's not many left, and that we need to really preserve what's left before it's too late. And he was very exasperated, very sad, and it was actually very sad waking up, because he just looked so sad and exasperated about the whole situation. And one of the other things I got from the dream is that they very much see themselves as Welsh, As I said, they refer to Elwood as being in the wilderness now, not in England, but in the wilderness. Um, so they see that Elwood should be Welsh and is on the wrong side of the border.
Wow. Okay, there's so much I was hearing from you talking there and just processing. Is it okay if I just pick up on a few things that you said, Lauren?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So the first thing was the appearance of the little man. Um, I've drawn beings like that, and I know other fairy artists that have drawn beings that look like Yoda.
Yeah.
And obviously there is Yoda that was developed by Brian and Wendy Froud, who are very connected to fairies. And you mentioned his name was Hector.
Yeah.
So what came to me, because he was pointing at the land, was that Hector is also the name of like a measurement of land, isn't it? There's Hector the name, and then hectare, the measurement of a area of land. It's like an
Uh,
old-fashioned measurement. So that would fit
that's
with.
interesting because I was thinking it's not a very Welsh name that I, because he was so adamant it was Welsh. So I did think it was a very Welsh name, so I was quite surprised by it.
Well, it could have a double meaning because sometimes fairy names have a double meaning. My experience, and maybe in your experience, Laura, I'd like to hear about your other dreams as well in a bit.
Sure.
Fairies don't give us their real names because if they give us their real names, the idea is that then we have power over them. So they tend to give us names that are symbolic in some way. So yeah, it'd be interesting to research the name Hector, wouldn't it? And
Yeah.
find out the meaning of it and where it comes from. The other thing was about the men that they sound like, and I think you said that they looked like miners, that they could be miners, and that's my
Um,
feeling as you were describing them. And I was
yeah, it's
thinking,
only after I looked up Elwood I saw that it had a lot of mine shafts there that I sort of made a connection. I don't really know. All I can say is that they were definitely workmen, like big workmen. They were very grubby, very dirty, sort of black on their faces, and um, old style clothing, workwear. And they were definitely all wearing hats. I thought it was caps that they were wearing.
that's interesting that they were working with the fairies.
Yes,
That sort of confirms some things I've heard with spirits working alongside fairies or appearing in, that they can appear together and work together, and that there's this woman. I got chills when you mentioned the woman, that she's an in-between person, because again, that's something I've heard other people speak about. And
they
only,
appear quite often. The in
sorry?
between people, they appear quite often. I've never seen the same one twice.
Mm.
I've had males and females, and even actors, interpreters. If I've had a Fabian that hasn't spoken English, they will interpret for them.
Oh, that's interesting. And are these in-between people, do they just appear in dreams, or do they come to you in meditations, or have you ever sort of seen, are you clairvoyant and you've seen one of these people
I
manifest ever? Or
perhaps I have seen definitely. I used to see them quite a lot, a man. He was always trying to disguise himself, but I could usually see through it. It was a man with long grey hair in a robe, a big robe. It's like
Mm.
dark blue or grey, and I would see him quite a lot. He would appear a lot when I woke up or was going to sleep around my bed. So he used to quite freak me out a bit. But he used to appear a lot, but I haven't seen him for a long time now.
Who do you feel this man is? What sort of sense do you get of him?
I think he's some kind of spirit guide. I've seen him in dreams. He's spoken to me in a couple of dreams before. But mostly I saw him on waking up. He'd just be standing, staring at me.
Ah,
Um, yeah, and I think once he was like right over my face, and I was so kind of freaked out. I put my arm straight through him, and he disappeared. And I've never seen him since because I just said out loud, "You've gone too far," because it really frightened me, and I haven't seen him since.
wow. Does he come across as human or?
Yeah, he's very well. He's very human in appearance, but he's I find him because he wears like almost like monk robes, but he's not a monk. He's got long hair, long grey hair.
I mean, he sounds like Merlin,
No,
like wizardy. He
yeah,
sounds like a wise man.
yes. Actually, I never even thought of that. To be honest.
When you mentioned the blue robe, have you ever felt that you've got a connection to Merlin?
Uh, no, I'd never. It's not something I ever considered.
How interesting. Yeah, that's what came up for me when you were talking about him. I thought that sounds
Um,
like
I know when
yeah.
he spoke in dreams, he's very abrupt and to the point.
Okay. Does he have an accent or does he have an English accent or does he sound like he comes from somewhere else?
It sounded English when he spoke.
And what about the woman the in-between woman that came to you in the dream? How's she dressed and what sort of time period do you feel that she comes from?
I She was almost looked like a younger version of my sister. I think she was trying to look like my sister, but she didn't quite get it right. But that's what I think she was trying to look like.
Mhm. Okay. So she's quite a young woman.
Yeah, she was very young.
Mm.
And all of them, the in between, I call them the in between people, they're always very young, almost like going from a girl to a woman or a
Okay.
boy to a man.
And because there's the she people, which are fairy people that look very human. They're also known as the shining ones. But you say that they seem more like they're humans that are working alongside fairies.
Yes,
Yeah.
I didn't feel that they were fae beings. They were just
Mm.
something in between.
Ah. And when they interpret things for you, Lauren, how do they use sign language or do they just repeat things in English to you? Or
I've only had that once. She just repeated, it was a different female. Um, I just asked a question and she would say it in their language and then tell me the answer back.
okay, wow. And this connection, so they've said that they're Welsh fairies
Yes,
and Elwood is has been designated on maps to be in England, is that right?
yes,
Ah, so it's right on the border of Wales, but the fairies say that it's Welsh. This
yes.
area is what, yeah.
Yeah, they're very adamant that it's on the wrong side of the border.
Okay. And what do you feel they want you to do?
I just think to do with the trees. They don't want them taken up. It's very important to them. Something that I didn't mention from the dream is that I saw another fae being, but it didn't seem to see me, didn't seem to notice me. It was just going by its business, coming out of one of the trees and doing its thing. It did it twice in the meantime when I was talking and just went back in. And another little fae being had really white, kind of like mad professor hair, just going about its business. I just think this area, even though I've looked it up and I can't see anything supernatural there, but to me it feels like it's a real hotbed of things going on there, and they want it protected. It's important to them, that area, and it's very important to them.
I'd be really interested in, I expect you would as well, going to Elwood
Yes,
and sensing into the place and connecting with the fairies there and asking them more about how we can help. Have you asked them? Have you connected with them again and said, how do you want me to help?
yeah, I always try, but I never get anywhere. It's almost like they come in to me whenever they want. I don't have any control. I can never seem to connect. It's just when they want to, they drop in.
Okay. Well, it sounds like they don't want the trees uprooted. They need some kind of intermediary to step in and say, protect the trees, protect these important elements of this landscape. Don't build on them.
Yeah, and it was just because he kept saying they have a certain, well, he said the leaves rather than the trees have a memory, and there's not many left now. So what's left? I think they're desperate for us to step in and save. It's almost like a plea for help, really. I don't think it was to me personally, it's to people in general that they need our help.
Oh, I find this really moving. It's really heart wrenching.
Yeah,
And I'm just thinking of things we can do. Obviously, you're sharing your story on this show, which is going to go out to many people. But I feel that it'd be a really good thing to go to this place and find out, do a bit of research about what's going on there online. You say you've looked at old maps, have you?
no, I haven't. I've only Googled the place, so I haven't looked into it deeply. But there's not actually a lot online about the place, and it's very sparse.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, how would you feel about going there? I mean, I I'd like to go there. I mean, even if we go there separately and make up our own minds, if we can't sort of tie in together, but I'm kind of feeling drawn to go there. And this is
Yeah,
part of something that I do doing more with this show, and that's to bring awareness of these beings forward and of what their messages are. And I'd like to try and help them in some way, even if it's just raising awareness of this fragile pocket of history and nature, and
yes,
yeah, find out what's going on, and perhaps just contact a few people. And I think I found a newspaper report saying that there was some kind of campaign going on. I think the local people don't want this housing estate to be built, and one of the reasons was that they're worried that children will fall down the mine shafts.
yes, I saw that as well. Yeah,
Yeah, and or that pet dogs or cats will disappear down the shafts and things. But it's deeper than that, isn't it? It's not about safety. It's about the preservation of these memories of this place.
and
And
it's a
it's
very special place to the beings that are there.
yes, and I told you about a book called it's called The Fairies and Angels of the Forest of Dean.
Yes.
I didn't write it. I came across it through, it was through some research that I was doing a few months ago. And I feel like I was meant to discover this book because it was written by, I don't have it in front of me. I'll send a picture of it to you and I'll put the details in the episode, or I'll add a bit in later to say what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Who the author is. So the woman that wrote it, she's no longer with us, but she lived in the Forest of Dean with her husband, and she gathered stories about fairies, and she'd had her own experiences of fairies in the Forest of Dean. So there are many fairies there, according to her accounts. And her son has kept a few precious prints of this book. So I can give you his email address so you can order your own copy. But what I'm going to do this evening is I'm going to look through my copy of that book and look at the places that are mentioned. Because there might be a place I don't even know if Elwood's mentioned in this book, but there might be a place next to it, not far away, that indicates where people have seen fairies. So, I mean, I don't think that anything happens by chance. I think it's all synchronicity, that I found more and more with this work.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. I don't think there are any coincidences. I think everything's sort of part of a bigger picture.
Yeah. So I think what I'd like to do, Lauren, is with this episode, and this is just thinking ahead, is that this needs to be part of a fairy whispering mission or investigation.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a bit more about your other experiences in a moment. But I just wanted to say to you that I'd like to sort of go further into this,
Yeah.
visit the place and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And then, work out what we can do, even if it's just raising awareness of what's going on and sharing on this podcast and putting some sort of information out on social media. It needs to be followed up, definitely.
Yeah. I promised I would try to do something because I probably would never have come on here if I hadn't had that dream. So I promised I would do something. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lauren, for contacting me. And I'd really love to hear about any of your other experiences or dreams.
sure.
Yeah.
I can tell. I used to have a lot of dreams about people who had passed on, and actually during lockdown, it got a bit out of control. It was non-stop, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I said, "Just please leave me alone." Screamed it in my head, and it just stopped. And after that time was when the phase started to come through. I hadn't had any Fae experiences before then, so it was almost like I closed a door and accidentally opened another, and they started coming through from there. It wasn't instant. It was I'd have dreams leading, almost like I was being prepared. Just have a lot of dreams about trees with doors in, archways, um, dreams like that, and then they would just progress. And eventually, because I always write down my dreams because I've had so many for years. It was on the 30th of March 2023 was when I had my first encounter, and I live by the sea, and I was walking down the promenade, and I could see two women, and I said, instinctively, oh, they're fae. And as soon as I said that, they turned round and walked straight towards me and stopped in front of me. And one of them was incredibly beautiful. She had long blonde hair. Her skin was so pale, it was almost glowing. And she said to me, "Oh, it's you. I knew you were here." And she grabbed my hand and she was almost jumping up and down for joy. And I was just so taken aback. And she did something which I've had a couple of times since with different beings, different fae beings, is that it's almost like a camera lens. It zooms right into their face and they just stare at me for a really long time. And then I wake up. And it's almost like they're doing something, but I don't know what they're doing. And the next night, I thought, well, I'm going to try and connect with her again. So I was going through questions I was going to ask, was I going to sleep? So I was sitting up in bed, I wasn't sleepy, I was just going through in my head what I was going to say. And one of them I was going to ask was, do we know each other? And when I was thinking that, I just heard her voice instantly in my head, very loud and clear, saying, yes, we used to be friends. And that night, I don't know if it's connected, I dreamt of a great big black cat that came to live with us, turned up on our door and came to live with us. And that was it. I've never heard or seen from her from again. I've never seen the same fae being more than once.
And do you have a black cat? Have you ever had a black cat?
No, I've had cats. I've never had a black one.
Oh, that's interesting. I've got a couple of, I've got a black cat now, and I had another one prior to the one I had, and they're just very magical. I
Yeah.
love black cats. There's something magical about them.
I always wanted a black cat, but it's just never happened that way. I've always adopted one, so.
Oh, so these women you saw in your dream. Now, I can appreciate what you're saying about them turning to look at you, full in the face. In my experience, when I've experienced fairies psychically, when I'm in nature and I feel or see them psychically, I sense I have is that they're really curious about us, and they're also very curious if we can see them. And it's almost like they're scanning us.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if she was just, scanning your energy field or tuning into you telepathically. What do you think? Do you think it's something like that?
Yeah, they're definitely doing something. I've had that happen twice since with them, like almost it's like a camera lens. You just zoom into their face and they're just staring at you for a really long time.
Yeah. I mean, when I see you sound very psychic, Lauren. Have you been psychic since you were a child?
Um, it's actually got stronger as I've got older. There wasn't much. I did have a few things when I was young, but not much. It's actually since I had a child. It sort of really has grown from there.
Oh, that's interesting. How interesting. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? How these crossroads in our lives can lead onto these new experiences, especially with fairies. I was wondering if you could just share what you feel fairies are.
To me, I've seen them, the ones that have come through, I've seen them in all shapes and sizes, and ones that look like human but not quite, and tiny, even the flying beings I've seen. Um, I never try, and I've decided now I never try and evaluate what they are, because I think the more I try and box them, um, the more I don't get anywhere and the less comes through. I think the more you just kind of go with it, the more comes through. And if I don't evaluate it, the more happens and the more you learn. And that's just my approach to it now.
You mentioned your ancestry, which I thought was interesting because you said your mother had discovered that you have ancestral connections with whales.
Yes, it's a very strong one. We had no idea. But when I looked into it, it was actually we found someone, and her father was a Welsh MP, and then going further about they were quite aristocratic lines, and we could go all the way back to royalty. So we've gone back to Owain Glendower and Rhodri the Great. We've descended from, which is like quite amazing, really. We never expected that.
Wow. Could you just repeat those names again? Owen
Glendower,
Glendower.
I think it's spelled many different ways, but yeah, Owain Glendower and Rhodri the Great.
Do you know if, I mean, I've never heard of these people before, but do you know if there's any stories about them and fairies or the Tile of Teg?
I don't. I did know of them, but I'm afraid my Welsh history isn't very good, so I don't know much about them. I know Owain Glendower was the last Prince of Wales, as in an actual Welsh Prince of Wales, who fought the English. And he never got defeated. I think he won some battles and then he just disappeared. And nobody knows what became of him. He just disappeared. And Rhodri the Great, I think he defended the Welsh against the Vikings. And that's all I kind of know about him.
Oh, chills. Just got chills because my last guest, the episodes I've just recent at the time of putting, recording this, my most recent episodes where I speak to Billy, who's actually English, but he lives in Northern Ireland now. And he was saying that he has Irish ancestry connected to Finn McCool. I think I mentioned this to you in
Yes.
the email, isn't it?
Yes.
Connected, yeah, to Finn McCool, and he experienced hearing these Welsh-speaking she fairies outside of his apartment one night,
Oh, wow.
speaking in Welsh. And we ended up speaking about, because I have a connection with spirit guide who came to me during 2020 during the lockdown. And it's interesting, many of us had quite intense spiritual experiences during that time.
Yeah.
So I had a guide that came forward to support me who was called Sean, but it's spelled Sion, which is the Welsh for John. It's the Welsh version of John. But he said that he had connections with Ireland. And I thought, I didn't know that the Welsh were in Ireland, but of course they were. I mean, they just had to travel across the Irish Sea. So it was that connection between the Welsh and the Irish,
Yeah.
which I didn't know about. You probably know more than me about. So, I mean, I just, like you, and any of us working with fairies and spirits, are given this information, and then we had to go away and research it, don't we, and look into it and
Yes.
find out what it means in earthly terms. So anyway, sorry, that's a bit of a
No,
tangent.
no.
So yeah, so you have a Welsh connection. So I'm wondering whether I really feel there's some sort of connection through the bloodlines with fairies, and the fact you have this connection and this royal connection to Wales, that maybe that's why they're reaching out to you. Do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I just I've no idea, to be honest.
Yeah.
No idea why they came to me. I just take what comes now. I don't ever try to evaluate anything why or who they are. I just take what comes and go from there.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all we can do, isn't it? We can just give them this information and just accept that's what's coming through, and then find out how we can help.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, the book. I wanted to just go back to the book that you mentioned right at the beginning.
Yeah. I have seen
Uh,
it before, and it wasn't the first time I've seen it. And it just seems to like it falls from the sky and it just slams in front of me.
right. And does it always open at a different page with different information?
Yes, and I have been allowed to flick through it once, and it was like a children's book, just full of pictures, drawings, poems, writings.
Very interesting. And do you think it's a fairy book or a book from the
Yes,
spirit world?
definitely.
Mm. So can you describe the book again for
It's
us, Lauren? Yeah.
big. It's a really big book. It's very old. It's leather bound, brown leather bound. The papers all sometimes it doesn't always look the same. Sometimes they're like crinkly old pages, but sometimes not. It's a big old looking book, and it has the ability to open by itself as well.
What sort of writing is in there? Is it writing in English or is it a different language? Or
I never remember. I can see that there's writing in there, but I can never remember what it is.
and do you remember any of the pictures in the book?
Um, Not much. I like with the Welsh Fae, they had pictures of them. It was like doodle drawings of them in there.
Wow, I've never heard of this before, of the fairies offering a book, but it just reminds me of an experience I was telling a friend about the other day with a special place in Cornwall that I actually just recently revisited. This is what blows me away. But so there are special places in nature, like you're talking about, this place in Wales called, sorry, in England, it should be in Wales, called Elwood,
Yeah.
that are like power spots, aren't they?
Yes, this is
And,
definitely one of those.
and when we go to them, so if we feel a connection to them and then we go to them, it's almost like, I want to say it's like an affirmation or something. It's like connecting with that energy that we've already experienced through a journey, it's like a psychic journey or a dream or a feeling that we should go there.
Yeah,
Then there's like this really powerful meeting of the land and us, and it's like a kind of like a bonding.
yes,
That's the way I see it. And so I revisited this place, which is interesting, recently in Cornwall a couple of weeks ago. I took my son to a college course, sorry, had a day's work experience in Plymouth. And I thought, right, I'm going to cross over into East Cornwall for the day and visit this waterfall and this woodland that is really special to me that I haven't visited since 2015. And the first time I went there, I was staying in this area near Liscard. I was staying in this little village called St Neot in like a farmhouse B&B. Beautiful, beautiful area. I had some really interesting dreams when I was there. Interestingly, talking to you. And I went to this waterfall and I sat and I meditated, sat in the sunshine beside this waterfall, and it felt so full of fairies that I took a photo of the waterfall and then I looked at the photos later because I often do that. I take pictures of places and then I look back through my photos and see if I can spot any faces or figures
yeah,
in photos. And in the waterfall, in the sort of shaft of sunlight, there was this rock form that looked like a little Yoda being, like you're describing.
Oh, wow.
And it looked like he was holding a book. I've actually drew him. I'm just looking at the drawings again recently. But and I painted him as well. I'll send you some photos of my drawings.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
And so he's holding a book. This is so strange. The more I'm talking about this, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this has so many connections to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that was 2015. I had the feeling the message was to write about us. He said, we need to write about the fairies, to write about us.
Oh, wow. That's
They
amazing.
want to be remembered. That was the message. Yes, I'm remembering now. He said, we want to be remembered.
Oh,
And you need to write this book. And it was like a big book, like you're describing, big, thick book.
oh, that's
Getting,
amazing.
yeah, I'm getting chills now. Gosh, so I'm wondering if that book, that sounds like a similar book to the one you were seeing in your dream, and
Yeah.
the little being as well that you saw. So that's so strange. I'm like you, I'm learning to, and it's taken me time, learning to take notice of these messages now and to, yeah, really take them serious, not take them seriously is the wrong word maybe, but to acknowledge them and keep a note of them. So like you're doing, you keep a note of your dreams. Do you write down all your experiences as well?
Yes, everything I put in there. I have done for years now. So sometimes I look back on them and I've completely forgotten things. So they're really handy to have because you think, oh, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And do you draw any of the things that you see or experience?
No, I'm a terrible drawer. I try and use AI to try and get an image of what they look like. Um, that sometimes works out. Sometimes it's not quite right, but I can get close.
Maybe you're meant to write a book. Maybe we all are. We're all
Yeah,
meant to just, from the information you've gathered and experiences you've gathered, to create a book from that as a way of remembering the fairies or reminding people of the fairies because they're part of our connection to nature, aren't they? And
yes, absolutely. And I've only had one which wasn't such a nice experience, but all of them um, have been nice experiences, and I found them actually very patient and very tolerant with me. Which sometimes when I've read, that's not always how they're put down as being, but I've found them a very positive experience.
yeah, do you feel that you have some fairy lineage?
I don't feel that way. I don't know, but I don't feel that way, but I don't know. My great auntie, she was a medium, and my mother and sister have, had a lot of things happen in their life. They have some abilities as well.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is actually before I move on to that, what does your mum and your sister, have you spoken to them about your experiences? Have they had any Fae related experiences or?
I haven't. They're very much into people who've crossed over. So we talk about that, but I've never mentioned the Fae. I don't know what their reaction would be.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? With the people's perspective on spirits and then all these other beings that exist in those realms. It's only if you've experienced them yourself that you can, like you have, that you can perhaps understand that it's possible to have these experiences
Mm.
with these beings, isn't it?
Yes,
I think it's difficult for people that haven't, understandably, that haven't had an experience to wrap their heads around it. But myself, other people I know, other fairy podcasters, many people I've spoken to are all experiencing these beings. I mean, do you feel that there is what sounds like you do, because you started to have these experiences since March 2023, but do you feel like there's some sort of upsurge in awakening to these experiences and these beings coming forward at the moment?
I, I don't know. I think there must be because there's more people talking about it now. So I'm guessing there must be. I think they definitely want to come through. I think they enjoy coming through and connecting. I think they want to.
Yes, I think they are. I think they do too. I mean, that's why I wouldn't have a fairy podcast otherwise.
Yeah. And some of
Because
them don't even have like a profound message. Some of them are quite just funny. You always might want to make you laugh when they come through.
could you share anything about that?
Well, I do have one, but it does sound, even saying it myself, it sounds completely crazy. It was actually one of the times when the book came down, and I was flicking through it, and I had one of those go-between beings there as well, and it was male this time, and I could hear, say, I couldn't see them, but I could hear them singing, and I mean, they sounded like the chipmunks. It was so high, and it was just what they were singing. It just was really, and it was for my benefit. They were singing it to me, but it was so bizarre what they were singing. And you know the old nursery rhyme goes, "Knick knack, paddywhack, give a dog a bone. This old man came rolling home." It was that tune, but they weren't singing that. They were singing, and it sounds so ridiculous, but I swear this is what they were singing. They were singing Kleenex bum, Kleenex bum. I use Kleenex on my mum and dad's bum. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but they were singing in unison. It was like a choral, and no one was out of time. So this was a rehearsed song sung for me, which I think they thought was hilarious. It was just so bizarre. And it's bizarre because I never knew that the Fae knew what Kleenex was as well.
They know what everything is, don't they?
Yeah, it's like they know so much about our mundane lives. It's really funny.
Yeah, I think they do find us humorous, and that's wonderful that they were perhaps trying to make you laugh. Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing that fairies do, don't they? When we're too serious about life, or yeah, maybe any of those sort of emotions that stop us connecting with our heart, that's when they step in with these tricks and
Yeah,
humorous ways to help us to remember who we are, what it's all about. Yeah.
it's just the fact that they must have rehearsed it because they were all in time with each other.
And did you see who was singing?
No, never saw them. I could just hear them. But it was very clear, it was very loud and incredibly high.
Oh, and this is part of a dream or
Yes, this
yeah.
is when I was flicking through the book once.
Ah, okay. That's so funny. There's an old story about fairies in Cornwall. This is from Marjorie T. Johnson's Seeing Fairies book. If you don't have a copy, get it 'cause it's amazing. And it's got all of these accounts of fairies from like the 1930s into the like up to the 1960s. I think there's a few sort of later ones as well. But Marjorie T. Johnson, she was a member of the Fairy Investigation Society, and with the help of a colleague, she put some letters in magazines and newspapers around like the 1930s or 40s, 50s time. I think it's 50s actually, did that, asking people for fairy experiences. And she had loads of letters come back from people that had had experiences with fairies. talking about their childhood and recent experiences in their adulthood, all walks of life. There was a woman that wrote in and said about her holiday in Cornwall when she was a girl. Her and her sister saw these little fairies dancing in a ring, dressed in white, and they were speaking, but they sounded like mice. She said she described their voices like high pitched, and fast,
Yes.
like mice would speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sounded like the chipmunks singing. They were just so high.
Yeah, so you're seeing it through your 21st century lens. They were seeing
Yes.
it through sort of early 20th century lens before the chipmunks were known.
Yeah.
Sounds like, yeah, very similar experience. And talking about Dr. Simon Young, who runs the Fairy Investigator Society, he posted in a group I belong to, fairy group, and he was asking people about, why some people hear fairies speaking in this high-pitched voices. And my theory is, and I'm not saying this is necessarily right, but my theory is that it's to do with time, that they're on a different frequency than us. And so when we hear them in our reality, they sound speeded up.
Okay.
Because they're on a higher frequency than us. And if you're sensitive, you can see them, connect with them. That was just an idea that I had. Because if I hear them speaking telepathically, they just sound like you're right. They just sound like they're speaking normally. Is that your experience with their voices?
Yes. Yeah, most of the time it's completely the same as mine, just sounds normal.
Thank you for speaking with me, Lauren.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and this isn't the end of this, because I will be going to Elwood. Now I've made that promise that I'll do that.
That'd be fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you experience there.
Yeah, I'll look at some old maps. I'll do some, I'll just do a bit of research, but go there. I think I just need to go there and tune in and find out what's going on.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure people hearing this episode will raise some awareness. I'll find out if there's anything else that could be done. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great, and it'd be great to hear if anyone lives anywhere near that area as well.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it?
Yeah, just to see what they think and whether they've experienced anything. Because to me, it feels like it's a real hotbed area. There's a lot going on there, but I can't see much. Just Google it. That there's nothing on there, but it feels to me like it's a real, just a real hotbed of things happening there.
Feels like an adventure.
Yes. Okay, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren, and really enjoyed speaking with you. I think there's always more to learn with fairies, isn't there?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think the more open you are, the more they're willing to share as well.
Are you wondering about?
Claire brings clarity.
Claire brings clarity.
Lauren mentioned her ancestral connections to two prominent figures in Welsh history, Rhodri the Great and Owain Glyndwr. Rhodri the Great was a Welsh king during the 9th century. It was a tumultuous period of fighting against the invading Vikings. Owain Glyndwr was a Welsh leader and military commander who fought for Wales against the English and became the last Welsh-born Prince of Wales. It is significant, I feel, that these two men were protecting the boundaries of their country and that their descendant received the message from the fairies to protect the boundaries of their land, which they said used to be part of Wales. After interviewing Lauren, I researched the area. One of the things I discovered was that the Welsh border is less than 5 miles from Elfwood, and that during the Dark Ages the area now known as the Forest of Dean was part of Wales. The term Dark Ages traditionally refers to approximately 500 years that followed the fall of the Western Roman Empire from around the 5th to the 10th century. I sensed that the spectral man who visited Lauren was Merlin. Merlin was King Arthur's confidant and friend. King Arthur's cave in the Wye Valley is believed to be where the king hid away from his enemies. Arthur concealed treasure here, and Merlin cast a spell so that it would never be found. King Arthur's cave is a limestone cave beneath a cliff in Lord's Wood in the Doward Wye Valley, and is a protected site within the Doward Living Landscape, a nature reserve. I recommend reading more about the cave in the book Albion Dreamtime Re-Enchanting the Isle of Dragons by Peter Knight and Sue Wallace. The TV show Merlin was filmed in various Forest of Dean locations. The series features deep caves, majestic castles, mysterious woodlands, lakes and paths. The book that I mentioned in the episode was True Stories of Fairies and Angels of the Forest of Dean by Dina Bryant Duncan. In the book, Dina shares her personal fairy experiences and those of others that she interviewed. She saw a fairy in her home, in Westbury-on-Severn, and in other places in the Forest of Dean. As promised to Lauren and the fairies, I made plans to visit the Forest of Dean and Elfwood in early August of this year to do some fairy whispering and connect with the resident fairies and find out how we can help them. You can hear the results of my visit and what I found there on a future episode. You may have noticed I've created a new logo for the podcast and for my work to embrace and celebrate my fairy whispering work. The logo is a butterfly, which has become a personal symbol of mine, as well as being associated with fairies. Butterflies, of course, are associated with rebirth. This is the point in my life that I feel I'm at now, at a crossroads, a place where I'm walking my path and also rediscovering who I am.